this meeting of the Newington Board of Education to order at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, May 9th, 2018. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have quite a few fun presentations to do to honor some folks around the district. So we're going to jump right in. The first is a resolution honoring Newington teachers. And here to accept that, I'll call up. I see Holly Maki, Megan Olson from Newington High School. I also see Andy Ober from John Patterson, who should probably come up just because she's in the room. And we have another teacher too, and you've got to come up to Sue Alessandro. So come on up, all of you. Everyone got rope clips, right?
I'll get them.
And I'm not sure why Andy and Sue are here for, but you have to come up anyway. This is a resolution honoring Newington teachers dated May 8th, 2018. Whereas Tuesday, May 8th, 2018 has been proclaimed as Newington Teacher Appreciation Day, and whereas the Newington Public School System is committed to honoring its teachers and recognizing their contributions to the educational system, and whereas the Newington Public School teachers are well qualified, very dedicated, and are responsible for the shaping of minds of future citizens, and whereas the Newington Public School teachers provide instructional opportunities that help prepare the students for the demands of the changing workplace environment, and whereas the Newington Public School teachers help students understand the democratic principles that built this nation and how those foundations of freedom are serving as hope for people around the world, and whereas the commitment of the Newington Public School teachers to providing the best education possible for their students is exemplary, and it is the desire of the Board of Education that teachers should be made aware of their appreciation. Therefore, we do hereby proclaim Tuesday, May 8th, 2018 as Newington Teacher Appreciation Day. Be it resolved that we urge all the citizens of our community to join with us in actively expressing gratitude to Newington teachers who represent an investment in excellence in our community. Be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Newington Board of Education is directed to spread this resolution on the minutes of this meeting and to provide a suitable copy to the President of the Newington Teachers Association. And be signed by all the members of the Board of Education. That resolution does have a lot of weighty words in it, but that's how we feel about our teachers as the backbone of educating our students and future leaders. And I would open up to board comment before turning it over to Holly for a couple words. Dr. Braverman.
You all impact our students every hour, every day, and we're proud to have you there for making a difference in their lives. So thank you, all of you.
Mr. Vasselli.
Just thank you, because what you do is remarkable. Thanks again.
Mrs. Guy.
I'll just use my portable mic right here. I would, thank you for everything. I never, ever have to question the commitment that the teachers have to our students. I have 2 kids in the school system, and they are very well taken care of. They're well educated, and I know every day when they go to school that they are going to be happy and they're going to be learning. Even if they don't want to be learning, they are definitely learning, and the commitment is above and beyond what I have ever expected from our school. So thank you for all that you do and all of the work that you put into it and the extra hours. It is very, very much appreciated.
Mrs. Strauss.
I also just want to say thank you, what you guys do. This is weird. I'm with Mrs. Guyan. Hold on. It's weird talking in my back to you. All of you guys do a phenomenal job, every teacher in this district. And as a parent, I appreciate it. As a board member, I appreciate it. So thank you for everything that you do.
Mr. Brand.
So every day, my daughter Nora comes home and she pretends to be Lindsay Jensen, who obviously you both know very well. And I think, and she's done that first grade, kindergarten, and it's the culture of just loving learning in the schools is very apparent, and I think you all just do such a great job, and just send our thanks to all of your colleagues, please.
I'd just like to say thank you very much. I appreciate your service to our children, and I think you do a great job.
Sue?
So I'm joined by colleagues here in the district, and I just wanted to accept the resolution on behalf of all the teachers at Newington Public Schools. And I invited Megan to join me tonight for two reasons. One, she's a colleague in my department, but two, Megan is like many of the teachers at Newington that have graduated. So they went through the system, graduated, and then came back to teach. And so I think that is says quite a bit about the community. And so I want to thank you, Board of Education, for supporting us in doing the best work that we can with kids. And hopefully, years down the road, we'll see more students that graduate and come back to teach. No way, all three? So there you just, right? Look at that. We won't tell what years we all
Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we are on to item number 2 for our presentations, a resolution honoring Newington tutors and assisters. And coming to accept is Marilena Guglioso, the Director of Student Services, Bruce Fletcher, a tutor at Newington High School, and Stanley Dombrowski, a tutor at Elizabeth Green. This is a resolution honoring Newington tutors, and we do this intentionally, that we honor tutors at the same time as our teachers, because of the importance of both parts of our system. Whereas Tuesday, May 8th, 2018 has been proclaimed as Newington Tutor Appreciation Day, and whereas the Newington Public School System is committed to honoring its tutors and recognizing their contributions to the educational system, and whereas the Newington Public School tutors are well qualified, very dedicated, and maintain a close working relationship with students, school staff, and parents. And whereas the Newington Public School tutors provide assistance, direction, and guidance to students under the direction of special education and regular education teachers. And whereas the Newington Public School tutors reinforce skills, assist students in completing work, using technology, organizing, and assisting with physical needs and personal care. And whereas the Newington Public School tutors contribute to the success of the entire school system and are always willing to go above and beyond their duties. Therefore, we do hereby proclaim Tuesday, May 8th, 2018 as Newington Tutor Appreciation Day. Be it resolved that we urge all the citizens of our community to join with us in actively expressing gratitude to Newington tutors who represent an investment in excellence in our community. Be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Newington Board of Education is directed to spread this resolution upon the minutes of this meeting, provide a suitable copy of the presentation, and signed by all the members of the Board of Education.
As a former teacher here in town, I can't express what the tutors and assisters do in the classroom. They provide so much support for the teacher, and I would hate to see that program ever eliminated, and hopefully advance it. So thank you.
Hello. Yes, thank you for all of the work that you do. It's you add a humongous amount of I don't even know what word I'm looking for. You add a lot to what the students are learning at school, and I know that from in my past life, I was a special ed tutor right here in Newington, so I know a little bit about what you guys are doing, and I have students in the system, so I have had a lot of contact with the tutors and assisters throughout the years that my kids have been in the school, so I appreciate all that you do. You really do have a huge impact on our students. I know they make a lot of close connections with you guys because you work closely with students, so thank you for all of your hard work and dedication that you provide for us.
I just want to thank you. I know as a teacher, tutors are teachers, and the word tutor is just a name, and you guys are just as much responsible for educating the children of our town as our educators, as our teachers. So I just want to thank you. I know that sometimes you guys are the unsung heroes, and you are truly appreciated tonight, so thank you.
I want to thank you as well. I know that as a one-on-one tutor, you could make a difference in a concept that a student might have missed, and then once you give it to them, then they move on and they really master the rest. So thank you for being there for our students and us. Thank you.
I also just want to, I was a graduate of law school. I know how hard work is. That's how hard I work every day. I feel like in classrooms, more and more people should learn how these classrooms work.
Well, so it worked out perfectly on student. At some point, we're going to do some discussion on how long you're late. And 14. And but I personally feel it's about a snitch in this world, this story, and that's
Our next resolution is a resolution honoring Newington nurses.
I think we have Marcy Hetherington, the Senior Nurse Administrator, and Katie Saunders from John Wallace Middle School. This is my first time doing this, so bear with me. Okay, this is the resolution honoring school nurses dated May 9th, 2018. Whereas Wednesday, May 9th, 2018 has been proclaimed as Newington School Nurses Day, and whereas Newington School nurses help to foster a healthy, nurturing community in which our children can learn and grow, and whereas Newington school nurses are the first and sometimes only line of defense against the illnesses and conditions our students face, making their contribution to the education and welfare of our student population valuable, and whereas Newington school nurses, by nature of their profession, are called upon to take on roles beyond that of health provider, acting as teacher, confidant, mentor, and friend to the students of Newington, and whereas Newington school nurses are dedicated to the success and wellness of Newington's future generations. Therefore, we do hereby proclaim Wednesday, May 9th, 2018 as Newington School Nurses Day. Be it resolved that we urge all of the citizens of our community to join us in actively expressing gratitude to all Newington school nurses. Be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Newington Board of Education is directed to spread this resolution upon the minutes of this meeting and to provide a suitable copy for presentation. Again, this is signed by all the members of the Board of Education.
So I want to say thank you. I think it's really important for kids to have a connection of an adult in their lives, and sometimes we forget that it's the nurse in the school. And you can see a kid like pick off a scab just so they can come down and see you because they're bleeding profusely. So we do often forget that you guys are definitely one of the people in the schools that our children look up to and form relationships with. So thank you.
I know as a grandmother and also as a mom from years ago that the nurse's office is often the front line where students feel comfortable, want to go talk, want to hang out, and providing that nest for them to feel safe is really important. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks. So, Mrs. Breen at Patterson, what I've learned from not only being a board member but being a parent is that the nurse is more than, and I know it's anecdotal, I get it, like, that safe place, like where scab go see, but my daughter has very bad seasonal allergies, and Mrs. Breen knows her allergies basically as well as we do. You know, she knows when it's a bad day and what to do, and she's constantly in contact with us when it seems to be elevating, and, you know, my daughter's down there, and I think it just goes to the dedication that the nurses have, and they really take the time to understand what each student needs and who they are, rather than just like, you know, I'm the school nurse, the old way of school nurses, right? Like, you're just that safe place to go. It's, you know, for my daughter, it's somebody that's there to have her back and to make sure that the parents are informed. So just thank you, and you know, thank you to Mrs. Breen as well, if she's listening.
I'd like to say thank you, because when kids need the school nurse sometimes, those are the kids we want to run away from. If they're going to be sick, we want them to run down to the nurses, and you guys are there to greet them and to help them. So thank you for that. That is probably the least glamorous part of what you do, but it is greatly appreciated. They really need somebody there for when, you know, their adults not with them. You guys can take over that role for them, and then just in addition to all of the daily things that you guys take care of for our students with all of their various medical needs throughout the day, throughout the year. Thank you for being with us.
So Katie and I, on behalf of all the school nurses in Newington, accept this proclamation and appreciate your efforts and support. It's interesting. I was meeting with all the nurses today, and at one of the schools I met with the principal and the nurse just to go over some of the medically complex students. And he said, it's really interesting. I feel like we get more and more sick kids every year. And I said, well, in reality, it's always been sick, 20, 30, 50 years ago. But because of the interventions and actions performed by the school nurses on a daily basis, the kids throughout the district are able to fully access their education. So we're pretty proud of that.
Next, we have some CAVE student leadership awards to give out. There are 6 award recipients across the district. The 2 at John Wallace, I believe, received them right now, so they'll be out in 2 weeks. But I'd invite the 4 students who are here to come up. We have Anson Mann from Martin Kellogg, Lila Taharovic from Martin Kellogg, Lucas Gould, and Olivia Colon from Newington School. So these CAVE Student Leadership Awards are based on nominations from the school principals for exhibiting distinguished leadership in school activities and daily life. The criteria for this award are based on their leadership skills, which include, but certainly are not limited to, willingness to take on challenges, capacity to make difficult decisions, concern for others, ability to work with others, willingness to commit time to a project, diplomacy, ability to understand issues clearly, the ability to honor a commitment. We have an award for each of them, which reads, the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education awards this Student Leadership Award to for distinguished leadership in school activities and daily life. I just want to add on to what I just read is that you've now been declared in public as leaders. And so now you have an obligation for the rest of the time you're in Newington, the rest of the time you're out of Newington, to really so I hope you don't take that lightly. You are someone that you really see the teacher. Have someone to share with. It's a responsibility to move forward.
So being a leader is no small feat, so congratulations for you all taking that step from middle school all the way through high school. And now that you're graduating, you two? Yeah? So you got the next place to go and be leaders at your next site. So great work. Thank you.
Mr. Casella.
Again, I just want to duplicate that comment about leadership, and as a leader, you have responsibility for yourselves and for all those that you're surrounded by. And yeah, I just wish you the very best, and congratulations on your awards.
Mrs. Strauss.
So it's not easy to be a leader. It's not always easy to take charge and do the right thing. So kudos to you, and I also want to say kudos to your parents, because they raised obviously 4 wonderful children. So congratulations.
I'm not surprised to see you guys up here at all. Some of you have known for a couple of years, and I've seen a lot of great things out of you so far. Some of you, this one right here, I've seen for many, many years as a neighbor, and very well deserved. You guys have worked really hard. You should be very proud of yourselves. We are very proud of you. You represent the community really well. You represent your schools really well and yourselves really well. So congratulations. And yeah, onward and upward, as they say.
Mr. Brandon.
So I got to know one of you very well recently. That would be Lucas. So I would assume that the 3 of you standing there with Lucas obviously are very similar to him, in that he has proven to be a leader within this community, and that's what this award is for. And I just want to say how proud I am to be able to sit here and we get to recognize you as a leader. And all of these bullet points, I think I'm a big proponent of the concern for others. So clearly your teachers, administrators, and your peers thought that you stood out among the rest. So I just want to thank you and congratulate you on a well-deserved award.
I want to afford more of you would like to spot. Say something about what it means to be here or you at school. Something that you can think of the time that you were leading.
I think this is kind of set the precedent. Very big difference to what I've seen today. It's service. Resilient being that things get tough, give up. Easy. Things go well for you. Things do. Still do. You should do differently. Resilient means convictions, saying what you mean, what you say, no matter what. So, sticking with our religion is most important to face adversity, face what's right and consistent without question, without a word, is the right decision.
I think Lucas already touched on it a little bit, and that is standing up for what you believe in. So my freshman and sophomore year, I saw a lot of behaviors that weren't okay in the school, discrimination against students in the LGBTQ community, specifically. So I worked at my school to help found our GSA club and our Feminist Society, here in the respectively of those 2 clubs. And even if we only have a small member base, it means a lot to me that I'm making a difference in my community and I'm helping out those students who need help and support from the school.
Thank you all very much. We have one final recognition this evening for our board student representatives, who I would like to call up now so we can publicly thank you. We have Prachi Nade and Matthew Ford with us this evening. They've been with us at the vast majority of our meetings. that's one big part of the reason why we're so appreciative of you. Although we would do this anyway if you didn't come to our meetings, participate. We had a big shift this year. We invited our students to our actual table and the table longer. We invited you to participate with the appropriate questions to ask. We received our expectations from secondary students. You, like the other students that we talk to, we have some lovely class coming up at home, and they read Student Recognition Award for Matthew, participating in the Newington Board of Education meetings, and your leadership within the school community, demonstrating exemplary service. She won't have any hands, but she invited herself to some embarrassment. Earlier this year, Prachi informed us at Student Recognition Night that she, when she was 8 years ago, so 5th grade, 4th grade, presented some of the awards that night to the board members. So at the very next meeting afterwards, we got the DVD from NCTV of her time. We also then had made a little collage of Prachi receiving her Student of the Month award at the Board of Education on February 26th of this year, and also 3 still frames of that DVD of Prachi presenting on Board Appreciation Night. So I hope that you cherish that. It's kind of cool how you book your time and doing stuff for the day. And I reps.
As I've stated at other meetings, I have appreciated both of you sitting at the table, taking an active part, and really bringing us into focus of to where some of our students are. And I just appreciate it, and I wish you the very, very best in your future.
Having you at the table, we asked you questions, you answered, you were on top every time, you brought great reports from school. You really made a difference this year. Having you here is great, and I think we'll continue that from now on, but you both were terrific, so thank you.
Yeah, just to echo what they both just said, but I think we all learned so much by having you at the table, and just your willingness to be honest and open with us too, and not be intimidated by the role that you had, I think really made a difference in a lot of discussions that we had, so thank you very much.
A lot of what they said, and then some more. You guys really did actively participate, and you were. It can be intimidating to open up your mouth at a public meeting where it is on live TV and recorded for people to watch forever. And
At least 8 years.
right, and know that we're going back to check. So you guys have been, brave, I guess I would definitely say, in just being open and honest with us and sharing your perspective, which has been hugely appreciated. You've done a great job here. I know that you are wonderful people with bright futures. I know that you will forever cherish that collage, probably bring it to school with you. Maybe put it in your wallet so you can have it always. So thank you for all of your hard work this year. It is a huge commitment, and we really, really have appreciated having you here.
Took out Mr. Branda's leg when I turned before, so I felt a little bad. I just want to echo what everyone else says. You two are amazing individuals to have the insight and the strength to talk amongst adults the way you do, and at no point did I feel like I was talking to teenagers. You are both amazing, like I said, and you have great futures, and thanks for joining us.
I just wanted to touch upon what you said.
we are moving on to public participation on any matter related to board responsibilities, and our phone lines are open at 860-665-8736. Is that a phone? Oh, we have a phone call. Okay. You're on with the board.
Hi, this is Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. I've been watching all the awards that you've been handing out, and I am so delighted to be able to see this through NCTV. However, the microphone that Chairman was using did not give out any audio too well, and maybe it can be looked at either by NCTV or by the board to see what is causing the problem. Over the past weekend, my daughter and I were going through volumes of albums from E. Green, Martin Kellogg, and the high school, and one of the things we came across that I cherish is a booklet that was presented to the Board of Education in May of 1998, and several students wrote to the board concerning a proposal to exempt high school seniors with an A average in a course from taking their final exams in that class. And every Teacher Appreciation Week, I think I should bring it up to the board and read it, and I'd just like to read the closing. In closing, I would like to take time to thank those individuals involved in the Newington school system. It is teachers like Mrs. Rankin, Mrs. Swain, Mrs. Goodale, Mrs. Pulsini, Mrs. Steinberg, Mrs. Robeson, Mr. DeRozier, Mrs. Victor, Mrs. Guerrera, Mrs. Mastrocola, Mr. O'Connell, Mr. Ludlow, and Mrs. Pepin, who have provided students like me with the inspiration and confidence to reach for the stars. I would also like to thank the Board of Education, Mr. Gianfrido, Ms. Amesy Brown, Mr. Hoey, and the town of Newington for showing their commitment to providing a superb education to the youth of our town. I just wanted to read that so that you would know that over the past 20 years, even though my daughter's not been in school, as you all know, I've been watching, and I am proud of the school system that we have, and thank you for your dedication. And Mr. Vasella and the other teachers on the board, whether working or retired, thank you also for all that you do, even now after you've worked hard as a teacher. Mr. Vasella, you're working even harder now, and I appreciate it, everything that each and every one of you do. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mrs. Lyons.
Good evening, Gary Bowles, 28 Burden Lane. First of all, congratulations to all of those receiving recognition tonight. Last night at the Newington Town Council meeting, they had a discussion regarding a Board of Education state construction grant opportunity. From what I understand, this grant would be in the amount of $1 million. That's nothing to sneeze about, and would lend much assistance to the Town Hall Community Center renovation project costs. This construction grant was endorsed by the entire council. I would like the Board of Education to put forth or consider putting forth a resolution directing Dr. Collins to apply for this $1 million grant, even though I think it was said that Dr. Collins refused. Now, he may have some reasons for that, and we'd like to know those reasons, but at the same time, we'd much rather have the $1 million come from the state than out of our taxpayers' pockets. So please consider adding a resolution to your agenda either tonight if you can, or put it on your next agenda at your very next meeting. In any event, this Board of Education state construction grant should not be passed up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles.
Steve Parker, 180 Indian Hill Road. The last few weeks, I think I've been combination of undercover boss or kind of undercover citizen in Newington, maybe dirty jobs. I got brought in a couple of months ago when after Alan Avery retired from the bus garage. And I was asked if I could kind of like, pick up, some slack, answer some phone calls, and just kind of keep things moving smoothly down there. And I got in there and I found out there was a shortage of school bus drivers, part-time school bus drivers. That's why some of you may have seen a few signs around town looking to hire school bus drivers. I'm a marketing guy and I ended up out there looking for school bus drivers. But I think when I first heard about working at the garage, it was, 62 years in Newington. I didn't even know there was a place to sit in that garage. And then I went down there and I found the office and I met Aaron Simon and I watched what it's like in this town of Newington, believe it or not, to have your own buses. I still remember my bus driver. But when you see a problem come up, like maybe a special needs situation, a student's getting dropped off at a house, the father's not outside to meet the student, the father's car's in the driveway, the radio gets back to Aaron, Aaron picks up the notebook, calls the grandmother in Manchester, she calls the father in the house, and the father comes out and takes the child with special needs off the school bus. It says a lot about having your own buses. I grew up and down. I remember Tony the Tiger, my kindergarten driver. I think it's important that we have them. I think it's important that we have the relationships that we have in town. And it's not just about the school buses. I grew up in town. I was blown away last Friday when I was invited to take part in the strategic planning day here at Newington. And I got to work in all the different departments and come up with ideas. And I think we had 7 students that day that contributed some incredible ideas, fresher ideas that I've seen in a long time. I think the town's in good hands for the next few years. But I'll tell you something, our IT department, seeing these Chromebooks, seeing these children being in the best of everything. So in a nutshell, I watched the budget meeting back a few weeks ago. And I understand that we've got to hit a bottom line. I'm a businessman, I'm a marketing guy, I understand the bottom line. But please, please, please think about the treasures that we have. There aren't too many towns in Connecticut that come close to the quality of education, quality of what we give our students, the quality of what we give the parents in town, the accountability from all the different departments. It doesn't get any better. And I think when we see lines being get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this, oh, we can save all this money. You might save that money today, but you're kissing the quality of the educational system in town goodbye. And for what it's worth, I went through the school system. My sister Kathy Morgan's on that board over there, Teacher of the Year. My brother-in-law Jack Morgan, great policeman, also one heck of a bus driver from what I understand too. So I kind of grew up around the different departments. And I'm very proud to say that you guys are all awesome. But please, please, please understand, you do have the best of the best. And be careful before you just start throwing things out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Is there any further public participation? Seeing none, we'll move on to our standing committee information items. We had a facilities committee meeting on April 26th. Mrs. Guyon, if you'd like to give a brief report.
Yes, it will be very brief. We spoke about the priorities on our public school CIP and our CIP. They stay the same. We still feel like the Anna Reynolds renovation project is extremely important, and the John Wallace wing configuration, trying to figure that situation out, is also extremely important. The other big thing that keeps coming up is roof repairs. So we spent a lot of time talking about those things.
Any questions for Mrs. Guyon on that committee meeting?
Phew.
Okay. We also had a curriculum committee meeting on April 18th and tonight on pretty similar topics. So Mrs. Guyon, if you would inform the rest of the board what that was about, even though almost all of us were there.
Yeah, it was 2 really, really great meetings. We had Kristen Freeman spoke at the first one, and we talked a lot about mastery-based learning and grading and the retake, redo policy, just trying to understand what that looks like and how it's been, where it started and where we are now. It's been progressing. Thank you. I have my words now. And then today we had 2 teachers from the middle schools to come in and speak with us about what it looks like for them, how they have incorporated it into their classrooms. And it was very exciting. They were pretty invested in what they're doing, and we talked a lot about parents' concerns and talking through all of that, and it was a great meeting, and I learned a lot, and I loved it. Yeah, very focused on student learning. Are there any questions? Dun, dun, dun.
Wonderful. We'll move on to our newly plaqued student reps. And newly collaged.
We wanted to start off by thanking you once again for the recognition and the valuable experience that this position has brought to us. Now we would like to congratulate Blaine Warner-Hyde and Luke Papalardo on receiving the CAS-CIAC Scholar Athlete Award. DECA went on to compete and participate in the International Career Development Conference in Atlanta, Georgia. Every year, this trip teaches DECA members about the importance of leadership and responsibility, values that they carry out every day along with their peers at NHS. The National Honor Society had its annual induction for juniors. This year, the NHS chapter inducted 31 students who are all exceptional scholars, leaders, citizens, and members of the Newington High School community.
Jordan Buslowitz was named one of the Connecticut Governor's Scholars for 2018. This achievement is given to students in the 11th grade who exemplify great talent in academics. Congratulations to Jordan.
5 NHS students participated in the CMEA All-State Music Festival held at the Connecticut Convention Center on April 19th through the 21st. These students went through several tiers of auditions in order to be invited to the festival. We are very proud of them and their high aptitudes for music.
The walkout event on April 20th at Newington High School went amazing. Students first marched around the perimeter of the school, holding signs and calling for an end to violence in schools across the nation. Then, participants went into the auditorium where they listened to a keynote speaker from Project Longevity, which brings awareness to inner city and domestic violence. Through the event, attendees were able to write postcards to lawmakers and messages on the walls of the whiteboard room. The organizers also registered 23 students to vote in the upcoming November elections. The event could not have gone any better, and students really enjoyed how educational it was. Many students walked away feeling not only more educated on the issues, but more connected to their peers and the school community. AP exams are underway currently, and they're going great. Students have been studying very hard, and we wish them all the best of luck. Now moving on to the middle schools, at Martin Kellogg, the Biomedical Sciences Academy students Nikhil Vishwanath and Simyuthika Thada won first and second place respectively in the National Celebrate the Mouse competition. Students were asked to submit video essays that described how they or someone they know has benefited from medical achievements that have been made possible due to testing on mice. Congratulations to both of them.
And last but not least, at John Wallace, the 8th graders began their annual trip to Washington, D.C. As always, students will visit the numerous historic sites, monuments, and museums that D.C. has to offer, and further enrich their learning about American government and history.
Board questions and comments on the report and other happenings. Mrs. Guyan.
I just love hearing about all the things that students are doing, so it's pretty exciting. There's a lot, in the end of the year, there's a lot of all the awards and all of that. There's just a lot of focus on the accomplishments that our students have made this year. So thank you for sharing all of those with us. It's pretty exciting.
Mrs. Strauss.
I just want to piggyback on the Washington, D.C. trip. I want to give a kudos to the teachers at John Wallace. This will be the first time that they are able to go into the Holocaust exhibit because of the teachers working really hard to get the tickets, and they all kind of work together on their computers to get enough tickets. So that's a really cool experience for them.
Further, Dr. Braverman?
We love having you speak to us because it's our link to the real world in the high school for those of us that don't have kids anymore. So thank you for being here and bringing insights every single week or every other week. Thanks.
Seeing no other comments, I understand you both have an AP exam tomorrow.
Yes.
Enjoy. Go study, go rest up. And AP Government, is that right?
Yes.
I'm very jealous that that is now offered. I would have loved that when I was in high school.
It is a great class.
Is it? Great. So good luck, and on your other ones that you took or are taking, good luck, and we'll see you guys again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are moving on to our Item E on the agenda, other business information items. First, we have a report on professional learning, which Mr. Farisi is going to be ecstatic to present to us.
As always, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to present the annual report on professional learning. And, in a profession where people are our most valuable resource, it's important that we continue to invest in them to ensure their incremental and notable growth and development throughout their time here in Newington. So I'd like to just share a few elements of the report with you and highlights that I think are very important. If you go to the middle of the report under the core values, I think it's so important to realize that we try to focus our professional learning on meaningful, individualized opportunities for folks, that professional learning is really tailored to the employee and delivered by highly skilled practitioners throughout the year. That professional learning involves really that ongoing job-embedded learning, that we do offer opportunities for more of the bigger picture learning through workshops and conferences that may or may not be in district, but then a majority of the focus of our professional learning is really in-house during Early Release Tuesdays, as well as then back in the classroom and in the schools, where you've all supported the instructional coaching model and coordinator model to be able to help us provide that kind of job-embedded on-the-job learning. So as you go through and into the report, you're going to see a couple of different areas in which we do provide professional learning. On page 2, you'll see that we have many district-directed professional learning days, where these are the larger days on the calendar, where we have offerings the beginning of the school year, November 7th on Election Day, one coming up in May, a half-a-day PD, where we have lots of opportunities to meet with our staff and really focus on all the many and varied professional learning sessions that you have there. I think an important note is that all of our professional learning sessions that we offer or we support folks going out to tie directly into our district and school improvement efforts. So there's a direct tie into those, which then directly ties into each individual's personal and professional goals around their educator practice that also aligns to our district and school improvement efforts. So I think that's a very important note to hold here, especially as we're going through. You're going to see many professional learning sessions that are focused on the areas of growth that align to those, as well as new curricular areas that have been adopted through the Board of Education, and we're able to support teachers in really understanding those curricula so that way they can deliver it to students in a meaningful way. You'll see as you keep going into the report, internal opportunities. One of our areas that I'd like to highlight that we're very proud of is that we have continuously grown the number of internal facilitators, our own staff, providing professional learning in district. And I think that's just amazing because we have such talented educators here in Newington, and we continue to work with them to be able to share that knowledge base with all of our staff and help guide others through their learning and understanding, so that way we can not only have more consistent practices in the district, but also, again, share that wealth of knowledge, so that way we're really capitalizing on the capacity that we have internally. You'll see all the learning in that area. As you continue on, you'll see that PLCs is a very important focus for us. That's professional learning communities, where teachers have opportunities to get together at least weekly at all levels, sometimes more, and focus on how students are performing and what areas they might need to collaboratively develop and implement lessons to be able to support even greater student growth. So we provide professional learning community learning opportunities for all of our staff at least weekly, if not more. And as you carry on, you'll see that we are also working with our administrators and helping them with their incremental professional learning throughout the year, being able to support our school-based goals so that way all of our students can achieve at high levels. And at times we need to work to bring consultants in to support us with newer learning that we might not be experts in, but at least we can gain some of that knowledge from the experts and then be able to carry it forward. So you'll see an area within the report that talks about some of the consultation that supports some of the learning that we have. And then, of course, we always try to provide folks with opportunities to go out of district when we can't assume and afford the opportunities for them here in district. we calculated some of the hours that we provide for professional learning, and they add up to be quite a bit. We are right now offering well over the allotted 18 hours that is required by the state of Connecticut. In-house professional learning totals over 803 hours, while our out-of-district offerings include about 3,039 hours. So of opportunities for folks. We're really proud of that. We feel like we have a very good system here in Newington. All the conditions are set up for it to be a strong system, and we're working with our professional development and evaluation committee to really look at the system and see what areas of improvement are needed, so that way we can continue to create the best professional learning opportunities for all of our staff here in Newington.
Questions for Mr. Farisi on the report? Dr. Braverman?
Mr. Farisi, how do you choose the topics? Do the teachers ask you, or you organize it first?
So it's a combination of a number of things. We have kind of a hierarchical system where, number one, we engaged just recently in the strategic planning process, which helps us design those strategic goals that the Newington Public Schools has. And then those influence, as well as how students are performing, our then district improvement plan. We have a district data team that gets together monthly and analyzes and looks at how are we performing here in Newington. What are those key action steps or levers that we need to take to continue to drive performance forward? And then they make many recommendations on our areas of focus throughout the year. So right now we're in the process of kind of unpacking this year to see how we did, and then looking forward to next year to create those action steps that will really drive the whole district forward. And whatever those action steps are, we align professional learning to those. School buildings then take that, look at their school data, and create the same type of improvement plan and align professional learning efforts toward those. And then we get down more to the micro level of an individual who looks at how they've been doing all year long, some of the newer things and innovations that we have to be able to put into place in order for our students to be successful. And then through the evaluation system, each individual creates their own professional learning goals. That's where we continue to want to grow. How do we really individualize and personalize that learning just to you, and then just to Mr. Vasella and each and every person? So that's an area of growth that we're looking at right now. But that's kind of a holistic approach to how the professional learning options are designed. And then we also have things that are imposed from either the state or new curricula and items like that that we are implementing that would also require us to, gain professional learning in those areas.
Further board questions on the report? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Farisi. We'll move on to item 2, which is a report on employee computer purchase plan. Dr. Collins?
This program has been in existence for several years. It's very cost-effective in that it does not cost the board a dime. It gives teachers and staff members an opportunity to purchase new equipment, new cell phones, iPads, things of that nature, and it is then deducted from their paycheck. I recommend continuing it.
Yep, and for those of us who are around, it used to be something we had to vote on. Dr. Collins now has the authority to just continue the program as long as it's working, and as he said, it doesn't cost the board any money. It's an advance on teacher pay that gets paid back throughout the rest of the year, so it's a lot easier if a teacher's buying a $2,000 laptop to do that over the span of a full year at a 0% interest, essentially, rather than just fronting that entire money, and it helps our teachers bring that technology into their homes so that they can continue using it for their own purposes or educational purposes, whatever they like. Any questions on the program that we have? Okay. We'll move on to item 3, which is a discussion on building use rates. Is that Dr. Collins and Mr. Giacomowitz?
Yeah. As in prior years, the board sets use rates for outside groups that would like to use any of our facilities for cultural events, sporting activities, and just different events of all different shapes and sizes, dance recitals, based on the different schedules that are in place. There's 4 schedules in the overall board policy. Schedule A deals with certain groups in Newington that are exempt from charges. Schedule B addresses costs for park and recreation activities. Schedule C is nonprofit organizations, and Schedule D is for-profit organizations. As in prior years, we are faced with increasing labor costs through the negotiated contracts, utility increases, the general cost of doing business that occurs, and based on, the year has not been volatile from that perspective. The cost increases have been manageable, but they have increased. So the preliminary recommendation is going with a 3% increase for next year.
I will start the comments by saying this will be, I think, the third or fourth year of my crusade, which has been the worst crusade of my board time, opposing the increase. Just so that the board is fully aware, I know we talked about this last year, is that the way that this transactionally works is that when the board rents out to a nonprofit or for-profit organization and receives money back, because of the way things work, that money goes into the public school CIP account, which is an account from which we do carpets and bathroom renos and some roof replacements and all of those facility maintenance needs. They just have to meet the criteria of the public school CIP. So when we're talking about the cost increases, the costs that we actually outlay at the time for staffing purposes or things like that, that's in the community services section of our operating budget. So we pay out of our operating budget, and the money doesn't come back into our budget, it goes into the public school CIP account. So for a few years, I've thought that it doesn't make sense to increase based on the costs of operating, because we're doing that in our budget. It's increasing the amount going back into public school CIP, which I understand from our other discussions certainly helps with the additional maintenance needs that we have from the additional wear and tear on the buildings being used at night and on the weekends. However, in my opinion, we're just continuing going up, and that does trickle down at some point to parents paying for the programs. When the usage rates go up, the parents pay a little bit more in participation fees for whatever clubs or dance studios are renting out. So I'm going to continue opposing. I lost horribly last year. So, Mrs. Guyon.
I'm about to make your day. I am jumping on board with that. I feel like this has gone up the last 2 years that I've been on the board, and it does trickle down. It is an opportunity for us to provide a service to our community. With you, I feel like I would like to give it a break for this year.
Mrs. Troes, this could be the year, everyone.
I concur with you, Mr. Schulman. I think that our taxpayers are already paying for the facilities, and to increase it obviously will trickle and make everything else go up. And I think it's time for us to stop doing that just for a little bit.
And just as an aside, this is a discussion item tonight. We'll vote in 2 weeks so people have time to change their minds and disappoint me. Mr. Brand.
Well, I'm undecided, so I'm going to
go.
take those 2 weeks and really look into this. Have we seen a decrease in the number of events that we've had based on the increase in fees over the last 2 years?
I have not seen any material change. We don't get the same groups year after year, but the general activity level is the same as it's always been. It doesn't seem to have any effect at all on people's willingness to rent the facilities.
Gotcha. I'm willing to be convinced.
Mrs. Maraca?
I would remind the board that during our budget process, this information was requested, and there is a document in that very large document that you can go back and find over the last 3 years what the income was from building rentals.
That's why I need the 2 weeks.
That's a good reminder. Thank you, Mrs. Maraca. Some of the work has been done. And the first year I led this crusade, I didn't fully realize the impact of the maintenance needs, and our maintenance needs are certainly increasing year over year because of the deferred maintenance that we have in our building. So I certainly am cognizant of that. But I still feel like it's a good time for a break. Mr. Branda.
I have a question.
Yep.
So this year in particular, it seems like public school CIP could use a little bit of help. So how does that, so knowing that we've taken some hits here and there, does that increase even make any sort of dent in, like, you know what I'm saying, like, is that increase really going to help us in the public school CIP significantly?
I think we'd have to look back at what the rental income was and then add 3% to it, what the 3% actually.
Okay. All right. But you hear me, right?
Listen, I hear you. I see the other side.
Okay.
I know I've been outvoted for 3 years in a row. Mrs. Guyan is contemplating. No?
I guess I'll just say that, I mean, yeah, I don't take it lightly because of the money in our public school CIP. You know, we could use every dollar that goes in there, but again, it is a community service. It's a way for us to, I mean, we provide that for our community. The community supports us, so I think that I don't see the reason to increase it again this year.
Is there any further discussion? We'll obviously have an opportunity after a motion is made at our meeting in 2 weeks to continue discussion as well. Okay. Mr. Brando, yes.
Sorry, one question. You mentioned the union wage increases. Is there a certain percentage that they went up, or like what is that value?
It's either 2.5% or 2.25% for next year.
But I would remind you, so that's covered out of the community service and the operating budget. All right. Okay, we will move on to item 4 on our agenda, discussion of meeting dates 2018-19. There is a list of the dates for 2018-19 on this memo. This will be voted on at our meeting in 2 weeks. Are there any questions on any of the dates or anything? We do not meet over the summer. We could change that if you like. Okay. Any questions on any of the meeting dates? Okay. That will be up for an action item at our next meeting. We next have an action item regarding shared services committee requests. Dr. Collins?
So we have received numerous requests from members who we believe are members of the Shared Service Committee. I do not recall any action that was taken to assign anybody, so just first of all want to know who those members are, and secondly, how would the board like us to handle the numerous pieces of requests that are coming in, since they are very time-consuming. In what order would you like us to proceed? How would you like us to proceed? We're looking for some direction.
I did pass along, as requested by the town council, 2 names from the Board of Ed to join that committee, and I believe they formed the committee and appointed the members. It was Steve Sylvia and Cindy Stam, who are conveniently both not here tonight. Can you share is there a certain magnitude of the requests or a time frame for them?
They're random, they're coming from all over the place, and they're very, very detailed. And we don't know which ones to process first, how you'd like us to go about them, and the board certainly wouldn't have no context around some of the requests that are coming in, and there's no mechanism to keep you in the loop with regard to some of these questions that are coming in, and they seem to be very pointed in their direction, if you will, which is concerning.
Dr. Collins, are the committee members asking for this, or other board members? The shared services people or others?
We've had several. Luke, can you do
microphone?
We've gotten requests from the board members who are affiliated with this committee. We've also got the request from town councilors at the joint meeting regarding the cost analysis on transportation operations. I fully anticipate additional requests in transportation, technology areas, maintenance services. So we have months of work and compilation and trying to ascertain what question we're trying to answer, and what's the context of the question, so we can provide a correct answer that makes sense. And I also have an educational obligation to all the board members that providing you that information so you have the ability to look at the information with a basis of knowledge and understanding instead of a pointed question just brought to the table or without any context.
How would you like us to proceed?
Do you need clarification? That seems really loud. Do you need clarification from the committee?
From the board?
On the questions, though. It sounded like.
And how do you like us to proceed? Would you like us to just do them in order? Would you like us to do all of them? Would you like to know about them? Would you like to have some context around how would you like us to proceed?
Right, because in the past, whenever we have information requests, typically they're routed through the board chair who makes decisions about, what gets on the agenda, what gets pursued as far as the sequence of work and what's most important and what things are in bounds and what things are out of bounds. Right now, employees are getting requests directly from the Shared Service Committee without any sanction or if there is any knowledge by any member of the board as far as what the purpose and scope of the requests are.
So it should be coming.
They're not going, they're just coming randomly from members of that committee.
Well, I wish they were here so we could clarify it.
Perhaps we need a process for whether you're on the committee or not on the committee, how these requests are made.
That's what we're asking for.
Yeah.
Mr. Vassell?
I would just assume that the chairman of that committee would approach you as chairman of the board to make the requests, or there has to be some communication.
So I think I was on one of the emails with the requests. I don't know if there were others that came in. It was incredibly detailed and pointed. I don't know how many have come in or who else they're coming from, or if they're just going to you, Dr. Collins, or to...
We have 3 so far, 2 of them being, high complexity requests at this point. The third one, there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding exactly what we're trying to answer because it doesn't appear really relevant to board operations, but we have to find that out.
And they're not all going through my office.
Right, and then what sequence? There's only X amount of capacity to do reports of this depth and detail and provide the correct framework so, quality discussions and quality inquiry can be done on. So it's a matter of what's going to be first, second, and third, and whatever else comes down the line, and if those are going to be presented to the board before they're presented to the committee. It's just the, operating parameters, how the interaction with this committee is going to work.
Mrs. Jones?
I hate to ask an obvious question, but the one that you're referring to that you weren't sure what they were asking for, were you able to ask the committee and were they, for clarification, were they able to tell you or no?
We haven't even tried to get that one first. The first one we're working on is the transportation one.
Right.
So it's a matter of where the priority is going to be.
Okay.
So if a new request comes in tomorrow, so this is now the number 1 priority.
Dr. Braverman?
So does the Shared Services Committee have an organization or mission or procedures? Who's on it?
They had a first meeting. I saw the minutes at some point because Mr. Sylvia sent them out to at least me, and I just don't recall who else he sent them to.
I didn't receive them.
They elected a chair, a secretary, and a vice chair. I don't remember who they are.
So the town councilors are on that committee as well?
It's a town council committee with 2 board members.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm unclear. As a committee, they should come up with their rules, how they're going to proceed, right?
But we're asking the board how you would like us to proceed. We do not work for the town council committee. We work for the Board of Education.
It's hard to know how to answer that, not knowing what the requests are or the scope of them, so I'm not really sure.
So would it be wise that when we receive them, if they all go through my office, we can bring them to the board and you can decide?
Well,
How about we start with this? We take the ones that have come in so far. You can distribute them to the full board for informational purposes. We can put this back on the agenda for the 23rd. In the other 70 hours that I'll be in the country, I'll work to communicate with the committee and find out some more information about what the expectations are, and what the result is if we're not able to provide the type of information that they're requesting, so that we can do this deliberately, and because there are certainly instances where we want to provide information to collaborate with the town and potentially share some services, and that's what the goal, I believe, of the committee is. So maybe that's a good first step.
Right. Some of the questions have come in that would lead me to believe there was obviously not any work done by the committee and even researching, because we have put out year after year after year a shared service document of things that we are sharing. This began back in the 90s, and all the documentation is there, including all the services that were merged in 1995. It does include the Yukon report that clearly recommends very strongly that the Board of Education and the Town Council jointly plan together each year on a strategic plan, which was rejected. That was a recommendation back then, and it would be my first recommendation as well. That information is all out there, so a lot of it is easy to provide with regard to that. But when the new things come in, they're obviously have an agenda. We want to be careful that we are providing the information and that it will be used in the context in which it was meant, and not I don't want to say twisted, but not given out in a different way.
Okay, so we're all on the same page that our first step will be to have the information provided to the board so we can understand a little bit more of the context of the magnitude. We'll get our hands on the minutes from the first meeting to provide to the board so we understand the mission of the committee. And then we'll discuss a little further on the 23rd, and hopefully Stephen, Cindy are available so we can ask some more questions about the work of the committee. And
so they are not all going through my office, so I will not be able to provide them all to you. I don't know which offices they've gone to, but they're just coming from all over the place to individual offices. So I can try to get them together from everybody.
I'm aware of 3.
Yeah.
I would expect that as they come in, if they're not coming into central office folks, people would make central office aware of them. Wouldn't that would be the normal protocol?
It would.
Okay.
And also, one of the requests had a specific expectation of it being date ready by May 16th. So with the way you're describing it, that this would be at the next board meeting for continued discussion, we will not attempt to complete anything for May 16th.
Okay. Yeah.
So did one of them come in with a date?
Yes.
So I guess my confusion is, and I'm just, if we're questioning which should do first, one would think that they would want the one that with the date of May 16th to be done first.
The other work was already in process.
Okay.
I don't know what else to say. If you don't have capacity right now to do them and you can't get it ready for the 16th, then you can't get it ready. And if you're looking for more direction from us, then our next opportunity is going to be the 23rd to give that to you.
That's fine.
Okay. Moving on, presentation regarding student transportation operations.
Okay.
Mr. Jacomowitz.
Okay. This is the first element regarding the requests. In your white folder, there is a large format printout that's two-sided. That is the foundation of transportation operations that's here. And the question was twofold that we received. One was justification as far as being a cost-effective operation. And the second one, which I haven't formally received yet, is assuming that there's going to be a request about comparing it and the value of contracting out the operation and fully privatizing it instead of having it partially privatized. So part of this is first and foremost to educate the board members about what we do, what are the components of transportation, what are the elements that drive costs, and making sure everybody has the same foundational knowledge and understanding of those elements. Because right now, as our own self-run operation, the level of service we provide to the community is much higher than what you have on the districts that choose to privatize. And I'll go into that in more detail in a couple minutes. So when one of the outcomes of this discussion that I'm looking for is some guidance about how to go about part two of this in determining how to come up with an apples-to-apples comparison of our operation to a contracting arrangement. You know, what I was planning on doing is overlaying a current contract from another district onto our operations, given the parameters we want to impose on that, and see what it comes up with compared to our cost of operations. So obviously I need to step everybody through this and have everyone understand these elements and just the magnitude and scope of the work we do and what things would not be included in a contract if it was to go up. So what I'd like to start with is in the middle of the page with all the graphics on it, there's two graphics in the center middle upper part of the page. One is essentially looks like a camera lens on the shutter, and the other is three circles that intersect with each other. We'll start with the one that's on the left-hand side of that, which basically takes the totality of transportation operations and breaks it down on a percentage basis as far as what the different slices of work and responsibility are. You know, as you can see in the kind of upper left-hand part of that, basically half of the work and the costs associated with transportation is taking kids around town on the morning and afternoon runs and bringing them to and from school every day. Okay. The second one for out-of-town busing is already privatized, and that is all our custom special ed runs to all the private facilities throughout the state of Connecticut. And that's about 15% of our overall cost of operations for the district. If this was privatized fully, that would stay the same. That's unaffected by continuing discussions. Continuing to the right, it says in-town busing for special ed is part of the base contract, just like the 50%. Those two pieces would be joined together to really form the core of any discussion on additional privatizing. Okay. Continuing around the chart, you have field trips, the management of the overall system, the cost of fuel, the things that are not part of the basic work we do. You know, the total fleet of 90 vehicles, approximately 30 of those are not school bus vehicles. There's maintenance vans, there's trucks we use, there are security vehicles, and some other cars and smaller vehicles that are, you know, interwoven into the total operation that we're financially responsible for. And then we have the athletic trips that are done, and then the support of town activities. You know, we have provide a backup function for the dial ride service. We do significant amount of park and rec work in the summertime, and as well as support for human services and library at different times during the year. So that's the totality of what transportation operations is. Okay. Moving to the graphic just to the right with the three circles that intersect, those are really the parameters of board policy and direction, which the intersection of those three create what the number of bus runs are required. So because of board decisions made over the years, the net result of the intersection of these three aspects of the operation yield what we're required to do, which in turn defines how many buses are needed to support the expectations of the Board of Ed. You know, changes in this area have an immediate ability to change the quality of service provided and can immediately impact the cost. And I'll go into that a little more in detail. You know, of the three pieces, the first one is walking distance. Right now, we have a 0.75, 1.25, and 1.75 mile radius for elementary, middle, and high school. All kindergarten kids essentially get a ride from the front door or from the end of a cul-de-sac. Bus can't enter. And at the middle school level, there's much more prevalent what we call line of sight stops, that you're somewhere in immediate proximity to a family's front door, so a student's not walking a quarter mile or a third of a mile to what they call a neighborhood bus stop, where 40 kids jump on one bus at that one place. That's certainly a contemplated decision that was made a number of years ago as far as the level of service that was expected by our in-house operation. And in trying to create apples to apples, if our standard and our expectations yield this cost to meet this, if we don't have that same expectation in the comparison, we're not going to have a reasonable benchmark and platform for making decisions. Okay. The third part is the operating parameters, and this is something that I don't believe we're really in a position to do anything about, but it is a consideration. This was a consideration over 20 years ago when Newington was considering redistricting in 1994 and 1995. At that time, all of the elementary schools were K-5, and there was room in the middle schools because there were 6, 7, 8 schools instead of 5, 6, 7, 8. And some of the decisions and things that were talked about were because of the spike in enrollment that was anticipated over the next 10 years, that there would either be a need to build another elementary school or reconvert an existing building back into active status, potentially redistrict, potentially move up the 4th graders to 5th grade in order to take advantage of the capacity we had in the school buildings. Okay. The ultimate decision was a combination of moderate redistricting as well as moving grade 4 to grade 5. That in essence balanced the enrollment 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. And part of it is also by staying away from adding another school, you don't have the financial burden of another administrative staff. So the net configuration of schools that was decided on 22 years ago was to try to optimize and have larger schools with larger enrollments, because we had the capacity to organize and accomplish that, and it allowed us to stay away from adding an additional administrative staff for another school building. So there are real savings that are associated with that that have been realized for the last 22 years. The downside of that is you now have a locked-in transportation arrangement where we really can't change our bell schedules and our configuration unless we're willing to spend millions of dollars to, rehabilitate and change schools around to move things back to K-5 or K-6, change to maybe an intermediate school, middle school, or intermediate junior high model, and those all come with other issues. And that's certainly not something that we're considering at this point, but when the decision was made 22 years ago was to gain the efficiencies through the configuration of the schools and the grade levels. The byproduct of that is transportation is whatever it is. Okay. Would like to, is there any questions on this right now? Anybody does have any history, or, if I didn't say it slow enough to have everybody follow along? Yes?
I don't have a question, but I really appreciate the pictures.
Okay.
That makes things much easier for me to understand, so I appreciate that.
Okay. Okay. So just in closing on the 3 circles, that really is policy, and to a great extent, policy and directives by the Board of Ed, that if there was reasons and desires to change the walking distance in the interest of saving money, or moving off of door-to-door or line of sight service to more of a neighborhood stop arrangement, that could just be done by board action at a board meeting, and that could be implemented, for next school year when in the redesign of the routes over the summer. So there is immediate ability and flexibility to achieve it if that type of cost savings is needed to be realized and expected of us. Okay. What I'd just like to go over next is on the far left-hand side, there's the little section called ridership, and halfway down the page. And you can see from that based on the board policy for walking distance, it's pretty even between the 3 levels of how many students qualify for a ride. So that number of students is what drives the design of the routes and how many kids can be on a route, and how we can configure the buses, because we still have the 25 minutes between bell schedule or bells at the different schools. So a bus can only go so far in 25 minutes, and the number of students that are on whatever route that's designed. So those are the limiting factors. Okay. Right below that is the hazardous areas in towns. Over the years, certain areas have been embargoed because of safety concerns associated with it, and those are things that, if there were changes to the board, walking distance policy or the level of service that the board chooses to offer, these would still have to be honored. One in particular I was involved in about 6 years ago was on Back Lane, on the south side of the intersection with Ledge Crest. There is a reasonably steep grade to the road where it just flattens out right at the top. But because of a little dip up and down in the road, somebody could come over the top of that grade heading northbound and not have an adequate stopping distance if a student happened to be just walking in the street. There's no sidewalk in that area, so there definitely is the possibility of that. So just because it didn't meet the DOT guidelines for stopping distances, it was embargoed. And all of these have similar stories and different reasons and purposes over the years why they happen. Okay. Okay. Any questions on that right now? Okay. So then, moving up same column to the top, we have the key operating information. So when you think of the transportation operations, how much activity is actually entailed in all of this? We have almost 800 bus stops between the three waves of bus transportation every day of the 41 runs that we do. We have 32 bus runs serving 45 out-of-district students that are going to special ed facilities. We have 600 field trips that are done each year, 460 athletic trips for this year. For the senior dial ride, our drivers are their backup, so we've covered 88 runs so far this year for them, and that's about 15% of their total shifts that they run on behalf of the dial ride program. Park and Rec is about 60, and for human services, we provide them truck access for doing their food deliveries and pickups for their events, and 24 library activities. So this is just to give everybody a sense of just how much has actually been. Yes, Emily?
Those 32 out-of-town special ed runs, are those the ones that are already privatized?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, so moving over, we'll hop over all the way across the page to the top of the right-hand column, and it's Newington Transportation Policy Questions. And these are the hypotheticals that I mentioned and spoke to about the potential of the board being able to make decisions to impact cost. So if cost is that significant an issue and has to be addressed, these are the hypothetical questions that could be posed and what the probable outcome is associated with it. So the first question is, go back to the 1 mile, mile and a half, and 2 mile walking distance limits. And the analysis on that shows how many students would be impacted by it. At the high school level, 63 students would lose eligibility. Middle school level, 176, and 175 at elementary school. So as on our rough calculation at this point, we'd probably be able to drop 1 bus for the high school run and 3 each at the middle school and the elementary runs. So that would be basically able to save 3 buses because of that. Yes?
What does that translate into approximate money, like 3 buses? Like, because to say 3 buses, it's saving us $30, it's saving us $3 million. I know it's not $3 million, but.
Yeah. In looking at contracts, because that is, easy to find numbers. Say it's $300 per bus per day for 181 school days, so that's probably $54,000 a year. So doing that's probably $150,000 to $160,000, somewhere in that general range. Okay. And then question number 2 is not doing the change to the walking distances, but modifying the stops and the level of service we give to families, where we limit the door-to-door and line of sight stops and push everything more to a neighborhood concept. So just by doing that, we don't see any high school students really being impacted, but there'd be 691 at the middle school level 469 at the elementary school level. And then for this one, we just have it done as bus stops because we'd have to redesign all the routes to really be certain of it. But it looks like we could eliminate 80 stops at the middle school level and 120 stops at the elementary school level. So we'd be able to take out 2 buses from the whole system by doing this. And then hypothetical question number 3 is combining those 2 issues. And the numbers, essentially add together. But that would bring us up to, probably 6 buses that could be eliminated by changing your walking distance coupled with downgrading your level of service to the community. Yeah, so if 3 buses were $150,000, it's probably a $300,000, impact as far as a cost-saving measure. Okay, and question number 4 really dealt with the bell schedule and other configuration issues, which aren't quantified by dollars, so we really can't do it, but there's considerations for how it would impact athletics. If you have kids that have drop-offs and pickups that are either before the sun comes up or after dusk, and the age level of the students, like in the afternoons, the elementary kids go home last, so they would be the ones most susceptible to having stops that were in semi-darkness, potentially, if we had to really extend the times of the bell schedule to get more kids on a bus. And then certainly grade reconfiguration, which has a big price tag if we have to add classrooms to the different buildings. So these have all larger financial price tags associated with that, are beyond the scope of the discussion, but this is what would be the byproduct of decisions like that. Okay. The other 3 graphics that are on the page deal with our bus drivers, our history of quality of vehicle inspections, and just the configuration of the fleet. With the driver profiles that are here, we have 50 drivers, 23 in the union, 27 that are not. More than half of those are Newington residents. And we also speak to the DMV requirements for licensure and credentials in order to be a driver. So in case you weren't sure of what they are, this is really just an informational piece. Okay, so that covers all of the graphics on the front page. I know I went quick. Are there any other questions or clarification anybody wants before we turn the page?
I have a question, if that's okay. Okay. Can you help me understand really quick, was this question brought up in regards to the subcommittee, the Joint Services Subcommittee, or was it separate?
The question of cost, and cost benefit was raised by the joint meeting a few weeks ago, where we were basically challenged to prove that, we are a cost-effective operation. In order to do that and lay a foundation where I can not be in an argumentative mode with people that says I'm not doing it according to their formula, I'm doing it some other way. I need to create a balanced forum that, takes into account the board's directives that they're giving us to manage to, and then I can build the framework of an analysis based on what everybody's understanding is of it. It's not like I'm making up my own understanding of what the analysis is.
So I guess one of the questions that maybe we can ask is how this, based on the mission of the committee, because the mission is, I looked it up, it's to talk about services that may be jointly shared by both the town and the Board of Ed to reduce overall costs. So I guess I'm just confused as to...
I think he's talking about the joint Town Council Board of Ed meeting regarding moving the buses, where several councilors asked the Board of Ed to price out what it would cost to privatize the buses.
So it wasn't a mission or ask from the committee?
Shared Services Committee. No, I don't think that's...
No, that was from the Town Council.
This was from town councilors who requested that info.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. All right. I have other questions.
And this is the foundation for that potential, I guess.
Okay.
So this just tries to provide a landscape of what everything that is done down there and where the ability to influence costs come from. And most of it is from policy-driven decisions on the walking distance and the level of service that is asked of us to provide to the community. Okay, so turning it over, the big chart on the second page is comparison of ourselves and 4 of the other communities adjacent to us and all about their operations. Okay, Newington's in the middle column, and this includes Berlin, Cromwell, Rocky Hill, and Weathersfield. Okay, so all the pertinent factors, it speaks to what their grade configuration is, the type of daily runs they have. We have a 3-tier run, one for elementary, one for middle, one for high school. Berlin, Rocky Hill have a 4-tier run. So they're actually able to split some of their schools because of the enrollment that is in different places and actually run the bus 4 times in the morning and 4 times in the afternoon instead of 3. That certainly allows you to cut cost, but you have to have the grade configuration with your bell schedule and the buildings set up in a way to take advantage of that. Right now, that's really not possible. Even if we split the elementary schools and said, okay, we'll take 2 in now and 2 in later, it doesn't change anything as far as how many runs we have to have on the road. So we'd have to be able to develop a plan that integrates the middle schools into it, where we can take those 6 schools and change it into 3 groups of runs, and we don't have a balanced enrollment in order to be able to do that. Okay? All right. Other elements are just, to compare and contrast what we do compared to what others do. In the type of operation, we're the only in-house operation for the primary pre-K to 12 buses that go around the community. Special ed is 90% outsourced for us, for all the out-of-town. Our in-town special ed is taken care of by our vehicles. Athletic trips are primarily done in-house, with contracting out work done only if we can't cover it ourselves. And the same thing with field trips. By and large, we do all of them unless we just don't have capacity. Okay. The different policies of the school districts that have their students and families pay toward the field trips is a little different, but it's not dramatically so. And then you can see from the walking distances just where things are different, community by community. Cromwell, everybody gets a ride by their board policy, because I believe at least 2 of their schools are on the same campus, which allows them to maximize their transportation operation and basically give everybody a ride to school. And you can see the type of bus stops who I spoke to earlier as far as our level of service. That in kindergarten, 90% of our kids get a ride door to door, and the other 10% only have to walk 1 or 2 houses adjacent to that. The remainder of elementary school is line of sight to the front door. Most of the middle school is line of sight to the front door, and high school is a blend of 50-50 line of sight and neighborhood stops. Okay. We support fully our summer school program that's here, and then we also support the 4 significant elements of town operations with our busing staff and our vehicles. Okay. And then you can, further on, we get into more of the number of bus runs and the number of vehicles that are on the road, community by community. And then some of the other information about, when the pickups happen and the number of buses that are being used. So the elements that are shaded a little darker are the ones that are really the distinctive elements that drive the configuration of the operation and how we have to do things, and that's where policy has a significant influence. Okay. I won't go. You can look at this, and certainly we can come back to this for additional detail. This is really just give you a landscape of comparison, community by community. Okay. So, from my standpoint, what I'm looking for guidance for finishing Part B of this is, am I to work under the assumption that there will be no change considered for the analysis to our current board policy, that I build the analysis of contracting based on what our current operation is with no changes? Or do I base it on some other standard?
Honestly, it's not my request that we look at privatizing at all. the point of the discussion that we had with the town council was doing them a favor by finding a place to move our buses so that they can use all of the land that we have to stage the town hall, because they didn't have a good plan to stage it otherwise, the construction. This is very interesting information, but in my opinion, it's a board decision whether or not we want to move forward. And I understand that some town councilors and one of our board members was very interested in getting privatization costs, but that, first of all, wasn't the point of the meeting. And second of all, that's a board policy decision if we want to do that, which has not been on our board agenda. Mr. Branda?
I unfortunately was traveling, so I didn't get to attend that meeting. I did watch it, so that's why my question, I wasn't sure which angle the unofficial request came from. I, like you, as of this point, I have never thought that we should be privatizing. There's been a lot of conversation lately, and I think kind of almost to echo what Mr. Parker said, I think it's easy to look at that first year savings that you might see, but what you're saving short term might end up costing you long term. And I think that this analysis kind of gives everybody a better understanding of actually what's going on with the buses. And then, of course, we hear stories from parents and people like Mr. Parker that they remember their bus driver from X years ago. So I just, I think it's interesting information and the public should see it, but I have not changed my thought on what we do right now.
Right. So I wasn't looking for any formal actions, just in trying to do an analysis for comparative purposes. As I mentioned, if you go with a neighborhood stop contract, you'll probably have half the number of stops around the community. As a result, you should be able to show a significant savings, and why don't we go do that? But that changes the level of service to the community. So it's a matter of just the balance. I mean, it's fine with me. This is not a forum or even a request to even consider anything on policy, but in order to move ahead to finish this, I certainly think the appropriate thing is to do it based on what our current operation scheme is, to really see where this takes us and how close and competitive it is, because I would be taking another district's contract and overlaying that on our operation scheme to drive those numbers. And I just don't want to be in a spot where it's viewed as the analysis is tainted or biased to some predetermined solution, because there's a ton of work going into this, and to get that sort of negative outcome on it is not where I want to go with this. This is far too difficult and far too time consuming, and I have to do it right the first time I do it. And so I'm just looking for your guidance as far as, I'm requesting if I can just move ahead doing this based on the current operation system, and that will drive what the analysis shows, whether it's positive or negative.
Mrs. Guyan?
If it is not our intention to go to a private bus company, is it a good use of our resources to have staff putting that much work into it?
No. Does anyone disagree around the board? No.
So it would be to just drop this at this point?
I mean, if the administration wants to get an analysis because they think it's going to show that we're doing a better job than we could anyway, that's certainly your prerogative to want to get such an analysis or get it priced out. It feels to me like you are all completely overburdened right now with other things going on, that the point of our meeting was, how do we help the town council by moving our buses, not how do we give them the chance to stamp their feet and say you have to get rid of your buses.
That's what I heard too. Lou heard something a little bit different, and that's where the next agenda item came from. So,
Mrs. Guyan?
I would like to say I find this sheet actually to be very helpful in understanding I think pictures are really helpful rather than just straight words. But it shows the everything that goes into it. So I find this to be very helpful in what you always talk about, comparing apples to apples, and this is a good picture of what we're looking at and trying to compare. So I appreciate all of the work that has gone into this, but I would hate for you to continue spending that kind of time on something that is not a board priority.
Right, these are the things that come in, right, these are the things that come in randomly from different people.
My question is this, and Michael asked it as well, was this in response to something that the town council asked for, or was it something in response to the joint committee? Because I have concerns if the town council is asking something in our realm to be doing for them. I have concerns about that.
It was a joint meeting,
Right.
and it was unclear to us who was asking, because there was a board member who was very adamant about this as well, and there were council members who were, it was a non-negotiable that they needed to have this. And so that's kind of what Lou heard, and kind of wanted to get a start, because this is not a simple task. I mean, I don't know how many hours went into this. I can only imagine. But you have to compare apples to apples, because simply by saying, look at what Weathersfield's paying for their buses, is not an accurate representation. Or look what Cromwell's paying, or look what, and that's what people tend to do, and they don't end up seeing the true picture of what the comparisons are.
Mr. Brandon? So just really quick on that point, and then I just have a question. I did read something recently where the West Hartford superintendent said, their bus contract went up dramatically, and the point was made that once you don't have the buses, that's it. So that's one of the concerns I have, is that you don't go back. You're not just going to go buy a new fleet. The question I have is, has this been put out to RFP within the last 10 years, just to find out what?
But you can't put an RFP out unless you're willing to follow through with it. You would have to go with the contract, and then you'd end up switching.
So no discussions with any private company we've just done an analysis like this, right? Like nothing's been.
They won't do a contract without an RFP.
Right.
Essentially, right. You'd almost be better off hiring a consultant to do do that task just for you.
Okay.
But what I have access to is, basically all the contracts that renew every year in all the other districts, and then try to, probe inside those contracts to see where the subtleties are and the differentiations that, need to be able to be identified to create apples to apples. And that's ultimately what I'd be doing for step 2 of this process if we're moving forward.
For instance, every year we put out an RFP for the special ed runs. So when we, and we'll get proposals from different contractors, and we're required to go with the lowest bidder. So that's what we do. So all of our students who are being transported to various places are on a lowest bidder bus.
So I guess here's what I would say in sum, and if any board members disagree, please feel free to chime in. There's no will from the board to move to the privatization, so it's not a priority of ours by any means. If you want to do an analysis for internal purposes to see if we are still doing this at a cost-effective number based on the information that you have, and it's not going to consume you from other responsibilities, please feel free and share with us the results. I would leave that up to you in your best judgment running the district.
Well, we already know we are. It's that much we know, and it's not just soft facts. I mean, if you just look at put aside the fact that we've been transporting our kids to and from school safely for 120 years. Put all that aside. Put aside the fact that we have very few accidents, or no drivers taken out of service for any other like some of the horrors you see. Put all that stuff aside. Buses cost the same amount of money. Doesn't matter who buys them. Just from a purely financial perspective, doesn't matter if first student buys them or if we buy them. They cost the same. We all get them from the same place. So they are there to make a profit. And I have said this over and over and over again. I did this. I did that job for a private contractor. And I know the profit margin. So I know how much profit they're looking for. They're not looking for a small profit. And so it is financially impossible for us to save money in that respect.
Anything further on this?
Well, just as an illustration, the depth that was necessary to put this together essentially is what needs to happen with several of the other requests we anticipate coming down the pike here. We have one for technology, anticipate getting them for maintenance, custodial operations as well. So when we look at the intent in trying to anticipate what everybody needs to know and make good decisions, it takes a significant amount of preparation and being able to educate everybody to be able to make a good decision. So that's why in looking at requests that come in, somebody sets a date for it, all of a sudden that's an expectation that has to be met, whereas that's something that's going to be basically quality controlled by the board for creating a reasonable time frame and sequence to the requests and the responses that are needed.
Right, and to be determined.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giacomo. It's the next item on our agenda is item number 7, an action item regarding response to joint meeting request. This is in regards to the joint meeting we had regarding relocating the school buses. Dr. Collins, you had a request?
Yeah, absolutely, because like you, Mr. Chairman, I did hear this, the same thing, that it was our charge to bring to the joint committee by the end of May some proposals with regard to cost on what it would be to relocate our bus fleet that is currently located at the high school. And I met with both Dave and Andy on the town side, and we came up with 6 properties. The problem is, at that point, the town manager made it very clear that that was not the priority, and that was not the charge, and that there would be no financial support from the town in any way, shape, or form for relocating our buses. And furthermore, the town hall renovation plan shows the taking of all of the property, including the area where the other buses are parked, leaving us to relocate all 80 vehicles somewhere with no financial support and no town support at all. So we're at a quandary. What do we prepare for the end of May? It was our understanding that we were going to bring to the joint committee some ideas with some general costs associated with them, with both temporary and permanent implications. And we just need some direction on that, because we're hearing 2 different things.
Mrs. Guy.
You said that the town manager made that clear in a written directive or on a phone call?
In a meeting.
In a meeting that you had with her?
Yes.
Okay, so, okay.
Mrs. Strauss.
So assuming that the understanding is correct, I have a question, I don't know who to ask this to. Is it legal, and I don't know if that's the right term, for the town to say that they want that land back that we have occupied? And if it's not okay for the town to do that, what kind of repercussions? Like, can we go to the state? Can we get protection from the State Department of Education? I don't know. I'm new. I'm just throwing that out there.
This is new for everyone.
It's an easy one.
It's an easy one. The board has full control over any property that is used for educational purposes. The statutes are incredibly clear. The case law couldn't be clearer, and this is coming from someone who my job is to make case law not clear. Okay? The board attorney has already issued an opinion because the town has been talking about just taking the land for several months now. They're not entitled to do that. It's still used for school purposes until the board takes formal action to cede it back to the town. There's been plenty of talk about the fact that the Board of Education doesn't have ownership of the property on the town records. It even made its way into the independent investigator's report, which was completely inappropriate in my opinion. The reason why the Board of Ed doesn't have control of the property is the same reason our name isn't deeded on any of the land for the high school, for the middle schools, for the elementary schools. We're not allowed to own land. The state requires towns to own the land and to grant authority for Board of Educations to use that land for educational purposes. That was done with the bus garage. Transportation is one of the many enumerated things Board of Educations are responsible for. Without us ceding back that land, which we have a carefully worded motion allowing the town to tear it down, without ceding control of it. It gets strange and messy because if the town, for instance, put, and this is hypothetical, I don't know if they would or do that or not, if they just put equipment there so we couldn't put our buses there, the only thing I can think of that happens is that the Board of Ed files an injunctive action against the town, kicking them off the property, which is a disaster of enormous proportions that we never want to be in that situation, which is why we sat down for a joint meeting with them, why I've spent probably 40 hours of my life talking about moving buses, which is the last thing I want to do because I don't care where they are as long as they're safe. We feel the same way. As long as it's safe and it's paid for, and we can do it, no one cares where they go. That was supposed to be the point of the meeting, which veered into getting rid of the buses, but the short answer is it's ours until we give authority to the town to use it. If there isn't a proper location found, or there isn't a location that can be paid for by us or by the town, we have every right there is to move our buses back there and could do whatever it is we wanted to make sure that happens. Not something we want to do, of course. But that's the lay of the land.
Have you had any conversation with the town manager about this? I'm just asking.
There was one meeting with the town manager, but it wasn't talking about financial impacts of it. I have talked with the majority leader about this. In my opinion, and I believe in hers, the financing of this move, which really is something that probably should have been thought of during town hall renovation referendum. If you need to move things, there should be money in the referendum to move them. It's a political decision, completely. So, in my opinion, our charge is the same as it was at that meeting. We have found locations, so we need to find out what the costs are, and then we need to have discussions over who's going to pay for things.
I can't get those costs for you. I mean, we've identified the properties, and the town needs to then meet with those folks, and but they won't give them a price unless they know the town is serious. And according to the town manager, the town is not serious about renting any property anymore.
In my opinion, we do everything we can to get pricings for a meeting at the end of May. We ask the town to continue doing that. We do that in writing. If they refuse to do so, then they'll have to report back to the town council at the next joint meeting that we're unable to get pricing because the town's unwilling to be involved in it. This is supposed to be a collaborative effort, so it's concerning that this is what's happening right now. We're moving forward as best we can, so let's continue on that path. We worry about who's paying for things once we know what it's going to be, when the grant money comes back in from the state, what that looks like for everyone.
We've worked very well with both Andy and Dave, and we're all on the same page with regard to, as Josh said, it doesn't matter where they go, they just, they have their own wheels. It just has to be, somewhere flat and paved and fence around it so that they're safe and that kind of thing. The matter is, do you want to do it temporarily and spend X amount of dollars to prepare a temporary site, or do you want to move them permanently? And here again, doesn't make any difference, but we need to get prices for you, and we can't do that. And it was my understanding that was our charge, to get prices to bring back to the joint committee by the end of May.
It is.
Okay.
Mr. Giacomones? Microphone.
Just want to jump in about the timing associated with either a short-term or a permanent arrangement. If you can just visualize the process of developing property, going through permitting, engineering, design, any state and other TP&Z zoning requirements and meetings like that, and then the ultimate build-out of a space. I wouldn't be surprised if that whole process would take 12 months from start to finish. And if they're looking for us to vacate the property by middle of August, we're only 3.5 months away. That's not viable. So it would have to be a short term and then a long term. It wouldn't be going directly from where we are to a long term. We don't have the capacity to do that. So just so everybody understands
what it would take.
Okay. I think the charge remains do everything we can to get pricing. We're trying to help the town council solve a problem that they have for the benefit of the town. So let's continue doing that. Moving on to item 8, a discussion on the Anna Reynolds Building Committee. Dr. Collins?
Yes, and before I said it's a good opportunity for me to thank Mr. Bowles for coming out tonight and actually allowing me to hear that in front of my face instead of hearing it through social media with regard to the grant application for the town hall. I have been asked, threatened, called for my head on a platter, everything, to sign this grant application, and I did not refuse. I want to make that very clear. I said I would be happy to sign it when it met the minimum qualifications. It does not. They are nowhere near what it would take for me to put my name on a grant application to the state of Connecticut. They're essentially asking me to falsify information, and I'm not going to fire me if you want. That's fine. I'd rather have that than compromise my ethics. So I did not refuse. I said I would sign it. I'd be happy to sign it, but it does not meet the needs, and it does not meet the specifications that it would require. So keep threatening me. I don't care. It doesn't make any difference. You can try to have me fired. You can do whatever you want. You can have me fired, but I'm not going to put my name on a document that going to the state of Connecticut, falsifying information. It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. So that's that. So I just want to put it out there and thank Mr. Bowles for actually coming out, because I would not have known what was said at the town council meeting last night until I watched it.
Can I ask you a quick question, really quick about that? Is it possible for you to send the board what the need is and then what the plan? I haven't seen it.
They haven't. They
well, from your perspective.
No, we have no.
So
they came up the other day. They came up the other day and showed us something. We would not let us keep a copy of it, and one showed up this afternoon, and they're demanding us to approve it, demanding that we approve it and sign off on it right then and there without any review. This keeps happening. They're just not ready.
Just going to bring us back to our actual agenda item.
So after, it was my understanding after the town hall renovation passed that we were to move forward with the Anna Reynolds Building Committee. Again, I need an architect to tell us so I can bring you an accurate price on what that might be. It was also my understanding that you might want to attach the John Wallace project on there. I don't know. So it's my recommendation that you just move forward as you would normally by submitting the documentation you would for Anna Reynolds and moving it to the town council and let them do whatever they like. So would you like us to begin preparing the documents as we did before for Anna Reynolds so that that could be moved to the town council for action, or not?
Mrs. Guyan?
Still a priority, so yes.
Yeah, I assume they're expecting it because I've made 600 informal requests. It's just not getting on their agenda for one reason or the other.
Yep.
So we might as well do the formal requirements and start them.
Sure. We would have to do it anyway, so...
might as well do it, and then they can discuss it at a meeting if they want.
We will do that.
Anything further on Anna Reynolds? Okay, we'll move on to public participation on any matter related to board responsibilities. Our phone lines are open at 860-665-8736. Sure.
You think in this business I would know about hitting buttons on microphones. Steve Parker, 180 Indian Hill Road. I've never been to a meeting with you folks before. I don't think I've watched it on NCTV. You guys do a great job on Channel 14. Really love the work you're doing. And we have some great volunteers down there tonight helping us out. But I would really be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that when Dr. Collins first approached us at Channel 14 about doing After the Bell.
Steve, I'm gonna 1 second. You're on with the board.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment during public participation of appreciation.
Go for it, maybe.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know I was on. I thought Steve was talking. I apologize.
We interrupted
It's been
Steve
a long
for you.
time.
He doesn't mind.
Okay. Anyway, the first time I met him, he was wearing a banana costume. My name is Madie Kenny. I live at 53 Crestview Drive, and I do want to thank you all for everything that you've done and for the teachers. And also, thank you. I had this wonderful speech all together to make a plea for not privatizing the buses. This seems to raise its head every couple of years, and thank heavens we've never done it. On the spectrum of educational personnel, the bus drivers are the first and last people our children see on their day when they go and come back from school. And Sylvia Malloy was our bus driver, and the kids looked forward to seeing her, and I always knew that when my kids got on the bus, they were going to be physically safe and emotionally safe. And I can't thank the board enough for staying with having our own bus system. And thank you again to all of you administrators and you guys who sit on the board for all the time and energy and effort you put into our children. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, Madie.
Maybe we can get her as a part-time bus driver. We're still looking for him if you're out there watching. I really did want to thank Dr. Collins for coming to Channel 14 to do After the Bell. A lot of thought went into it. He wanted a program that would be supported by the town. We spoke about it a lot at Channel 14 before we went off into it. We try to avoid anything that could be misconstrued as anything that we have a bias one way or the other. With Channel 14, we always have to stay neutral. And I was very honored when Dr. Collins asked me to be involved, because obviously he didn't know enough about my background, and I knew I'd be safe. He didn't know about the banana costume. But a lot of work went into it, and Dr. Collins insisted upon having students involved. And having known Dr. Collins through, like I said, my family relationships before, I really thought it was a good idea. And honestly, I really, really, really was tired with seeing the attacks that was put on this man who gives so much, who's got such a big heart, who was a school bus driver, who brought technology to Newington a long time ago, and whose favorite thing he used to do to get the stress away was he liked to go down to Mrs. Morgan's kindergarten class and sit around with the kids and get a reality check. And now I bring Abby with me. She's outside. And that's my West Highland Terrier, and I say that it's Dr. Collins' therapy dog. He really has a big heart. And when you think about what he has done, and I don't even know if this is the appropriate time for me to be saying this, but I never know what happens next. But when you think about what he's brought to this town, and just the example of what we've seen here tonight, and what he's done for our children, and what he's done only for the quality of the town of Newington. Granted, there's always somebody who's looking for him. He's always an easy mark. And as Dr. Collins has always told me, hey, the buck stops here. And he has never lost focus. He's never taken his eye off the ball. And with all the malarkey that I've seen on Facebook and all the bitter hatred, I can put it that way, that I see out there, I still think the majority of the people in the town of Newington, the parents, the children, the teachers, the citizens, think he's been doing an amazing job. And I don't know if there's a plan B. I don't know if there's somebody waiting in the wings or what any of the agenda is, because I don't get involved with this stuff in Newington. But I will say that I can tell you, through my family, through my own experiences, through the children here in town, nothing comes close to the quality of what he's given us. So for what it's worth, I really wanted to get up and say that, because it's just, he's the best. So for what it's worth, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Is there any further public participation? Seeing none, we're going to move on to remarks by board members. I'm going to break tradition. I'm actually going to say a few words first, and maybe that will inform what the rest of the board says. This is really for board information and any public who cares to hear it. I didn't hear the discussion last night that Mr. Bowles talked about at the town council. I was told that it was happening, and what he took away from the discussion that was had, and not knowing, it's hard to know if anything else was said, is frustrating personally to me. 'Cause on another topic, I've spent between 20 and 30 hours of my life over the last couple of months dealing with this issue, trying to help out the town council yet again for something else that was not properly done through the town hall renovation building committee and the referendum. Some of the things I don't know if they were talked about, but he didn't mention. I don't know if it was talked about that this is something that should have been done 2 years ago. I don't know if he talked about the fact that the board has never been asked by the building committee to do education specs for the new town hall construction so that we can approve a grant application. I don't know if that was something that was brought up. I don't know if it was brought up last night that the administration feels like it doesn't fit our requirements for what we need in the new town hall. That's been a recurring theme for several years now that has never been thought it was going to fit our needs, which is one of the reasons why the Board of Ed was never formally requested to take action and why we were never told there was actually consideration to do a school construction grant. I've sat in meetings with town officials who have confirmed all of that they know that this is something that should have been done years ago, and that only in the last month has it popped up its head. It's also personally frustrating that I've sat in meetings where we've discussed resolutions to these issues, created an action plan for what the next step was going to be, and 1 week later get a phone call that says that's not happening anymore. There are a multitude of things, and as you all know, that we've spent an incredible amount of time working to collaborate with the town for things that will be mutually beneficial. Moving the buses out, working on a town hall renovation project with them, moving a department out of the town hall renovation so they can save some money and put it on one of our school buildings is another thing that might be popping up. All of these things, happy to do. It's just incredibly frustrating that all of a sudden that will get walked back immediately afterwards. And then in public, there will be remarks made that has someone coming away from a meeting saying, you're refusing to do this. And that's the only thing that was the takeaway. I'm continuing to do everything I can on behalf of the board in these discussions. There's only so much I can do. All of these things that we're talking about are requests from the town council for us to help. And in return, we're not getting a lot of response. So I just want to inform the board about some of those things that I didn't hear Mr. Bowles talk about, and I'm not sure if they were mentioned at the town council meeting last night. I hope that they were, because they're all factual. They're all true. They're all confirmed by town officials, and anyone who's been following the building committee would know it was never talked about having us do a construction grant, and it should have been done years ago, because the timeline is you get everything set up, and then you go to referendum. That did not happen. We have been telling them over and over again, we're happy to work on a resolution to the matter. We're not getting the same thing back, even after being told that we would. So I wanted to give that wonderful update to the board members. We're still where we're at. We're still willing to work on any of these issues, but we need help on them, and we've been consistent in asking for the same amount of help. I've been doing my best to keep a lot of that behind closed doors, because that's much more efficient than getting 18 people together and doing something at a public meeting where no one knows what the interpretation is going to be afterwards. So the town council brought it up last night. That's my response. I will now open up for other remarks by board members. Dr. Braverman.
Perhaps we need another joint meeting, just piggybacking on what you just said, with the 18 of us, again, to find out what we can do first, second, and third, because standing in frustration on all sides isn't helping anybody. And we've got all these buses that need a home, and I guess we need some action. So at which time to do another joint meeting before the end of the year and see, with the goal being action steps. We're going to do this, this, and this. We have the mayor there, we have Dr. Collins there. I mean, that's all I can think of at the moment. Thank you.
We are supposed to have one at the end of May, so we should be having that. Mr. Vasella? Mr. Tufelt? Mr. Branda?
Really quick to piggyback off of something that Mr. Parker said. I think this week especially was a really good example of just because it's on Facebook doesn't make it true. I just want to remind the public and anybody else, it's okay to ask questions when something gets posted. It's, I feel as though a lot of things get posted by the same group of people and then no questions are asked about the validity of the statements or just in general, just questions about what is being said or what's going on within the district. And there's a lot of assumptions being made. So the golden rule of social media is that just because it's there doesn't make it true. Ask questions, find out what the details are behind the statement, and hopefully you'll learn something. Thank you.
Mrs. Droz?
I would love to see a joint meeting, but we call it and have the town council come to us. I say it, and I'm not saying it actually in jest for once in my life. I just feel like we go to those meetings and we're guests there and we don't have, we say what we have to say, but we don't have the ability to have an action step and have a vote. And I just think that it would be nice if we could have those conversations and then take an action step towards it. I'm growing frustrated learning as being new. I always made the assumption that it was kind of like, I've always said I can't believe we can't get along better. And I'm feeling like we as the board are trying really hard to do best by the town and the taxpayers, and I am getting frustrated with the non-progress towards it, and I feel like we're being kind of halted and made out to be the bad guys, and we're trying really hard. So I would suggest if we could, call them to us for once. I don't know if we're allowed to do that, but that's what I think we should do.
Mrs. Guyan?
Right. I would like to say thank you for presenting some facts to us. I think that's really helpful to put some of those comments in context because, yes, a lot of times people, us included, forget to ask for some of that background information. So just thank you, Mr. Branda, for bringing that up. I appreciate it. And so thanks to you, Josh, for all of that information that you shared with us. And then on a positive note, again, I just want to thank all of our teachers, tutors, assistants, and nurses for all of the hard work that they do in our school system. And I hope that the community will also thank them when they see them. They provide invaluable services to us. Don't forget that the art show is still going on upstairs. It's an amazing opportunity to see what our students have done. It's a really exciting time of year where our kids get to kind of show off all that they've learned this year and all of their accomplishments. So I look forward to celebrating with them and congratulating them and just seeing the excitement in the schools. Thank you.
And I have nothing further. So with that, move for adjournment by Mr. Branda, seconded by Mrs. Droz. All in favor? We are adjourned at 9:19 p.m.